Good afternoon. Welcome back to the ETF Inspector, following YieldMax Ultra Income ETF ULTY. This is the Friday evening update for the holdings and trades that were as of close today. And if you hear noise in the background, my dog doesn't want to leave me alone while I'm making this video. So again, we're talking about ULTY, YieldMax Ultra Option Income Strategy Fund. And with it being Friday, there were a ton of trades because everything was expiring today. So what I'm going to do, I'm not going to sit here and read you every single trade and bore you to death. So instead, I've already put it all in the chart, right? You can pause if you want to actually look to see what each thing is, okay? But I will just move through quickly and talk about how they did, right? So basically all the trades for today, Friday, May 2nd, totaled up to, I'll put it up here, a loss, a negative $2.1 million. So yesterday's trades resulted in negative $1.1 million. Today's trades resulted in negative $2.1 million. The reason for that being is, if you paid attention at all, the stock market was up enormously today. Out of the 26 funds that they hold, 2 of them went down, the other 24 went up, and significantly. So a lot of the calls that they had sold got blown through and they were losing money. So big picture, it's worth more, because if you take a look, the total for the improvement today is $9.5 million, that the value of the assets. But in transactions, in closing out the May 2nd trades and opening mostly May 9th trades, but there's a couple of May 16th, they lost money. So big picture, still worth $7.5 million more than yesterday, but on a realized side of things, they lost money. So the gain in $9.5 million today was not realized because they didn't actually sell those stocks. So they gained $6 million in value yesterday, $9.5 million today, but none of that's realized because they didn't sell the stocks. The realized losses were from the actual trades. So as far as and I know this isn't really the way it works, right? You wouldn't go the closeouts of last week's compared to the opening of this week, because they're going to change, right? So, but since this pays weekly, we're just looking at on a day-to-day basis, did they make money or lose money on each underlying. So Alibaba, they made about $76,000 on their trades, closing and opening new ones. Coinbase, they made $21,000. First Solar, they made $39,000. GameStop, $72,000. MicroStrategy or Strategy, they lost a little over $100,000. Nvidia, they made $132,000. Palantir, they lost almost $1 million, $858,000. So that's the majority. There's another large hit they took. Reddit, they made almost $120,000 on closing the weeklies and opening new ones. RH, they lost $42,000. SMCI, Super Microcomputer, or something along those lines, they lost $40,000. And then into the TNA and TQQQ, they lost $21,000 and nearly $600,000 on those. Tesla, they lost $115,000. VRT, they lost $140,000, and VST $660,000. So the losses that they had, it was a handful of very large losses that offset a bunch of small wins. But so as we're trying to figure out what the distribution for next week's going to be, Thursday's trades resulted in a loss. Wednesday's or Friday's trades resulted in a loss. We'll pick it back up next week. But I have a feeling that next week's going to be a lot like this distribution that we just got paid this morning. So if you read on their site, the most recent distribution that you got paid this morning, if you hold ULTY, contained 100% return of capital and 0% on the income. So basically, they lost money on these weekly trades just like they're doing now, but they made money on the capital side. So that's how they made their distribution. Okay. As far as the holdings, so I had this set up to where I had the previous information in, and then at the end of the day, I'd put in the close price. It would show you how much it went up or down and the change in value. But then I went ahead and actually updated all the holdings and brought it over to here. So this is not the previous close price. This was today's. That's why it's showing all these 0%. But before I made that update, I went ahead and copied over all the change in market value so we could add them up. That's how we got to the $9.5 million that were made today. So big picture, they didn't really change anything. So they just adjusted and moved their positions, their options, closed out this week's and moved to most of the time next week. But on a couple of them, they're out 2 weeks. But they did not change any. They didn't sell or buy any actual shares of stock, and they didn't change which 26 that they're holding. So I don't think we need to go real big into that. I don't think people want to hear line by line 3,600 contracts of this, 2,400 contracts of that. So net asset value, as we total up everything they've got here between the value of the options, whether they're, so that's one thing to remember, right? So the net assets, 240 million, roughly 239.9. But that also shows a negative for every one of these options that are sold, because that's how much it would cost to close them out. So ideally, if they expire as they move on, right, and we work towards that end date, they will decay, and the goal would be for them to expire worthless, and then all these negatives wouldn't count against you. That's a perfect world. They're generally not doing that. They're going to close them out even if it costs a couple cents when they go to roll them. So that won't be the case. But the goal here is for all these negatives to basically wash away at the end of the week. So anyway, if you sell options, right? If you're in your brokerage, once you sell an option, say you collect $25, it'll show as a negative $25 value next to that option, because that's how much it would cost you to close it out. So you didn't actually lose the $25, and if it expires worthless, you kept the $25 and didn't lose anything. But that's the way that works. All right, so if you are interested in any of the larger YieldMax funds, like NVDY or MSTY or PLTY, right? The large ones, the billion plus size asset funds, go over to Retire on Dividends. He covers those major ones. He does a much better job. He's much more entertaining. He even sings. So I'm just trying not to put you to sleep here, gathering the information. Since you made it to the end, figured I'd add in something a little bit fun, goofy, whatever. Since I'm a dad, my daughter bought me a calendar that has daily dad jokes. So today's dad joke has, what has 4 wheels and flies? 4 wheels and flies. The answer is a garbage truck. She laughed this morning when she got to read that to me. So, all right, thank you. I may or may not just make a trading update for my own personal account over the weekend, but if not, then I'll make a video Monday to follow the transactions that took place. So everybody have a nice weekend.